probably be in the bar and looking through cracks and crevices.
We'll see you in court.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Oh, hi, Mark.
It's delicious. Oh my God!
You know, again, no pressure to put on you, but this is the opening film of the festival, which is a big deal as a filmmaker and as someone who's been to FrightFest before. How did you feel when you found out you were going to be the opening film?
I was totally shocked, actually. It was beyond my wildest dreams. It wasn't on my agenda. I was just hoping to get in to FrightFest. So when I was told that, I was quite shocked, and I wasn't sure. I thought, is it the right film to be the opening film, and all those things, all the doubts, because we're all full of them. Imposter syndrome, it's always there. But I thought to myself, I just had a little word with myself, and I said, you know what? It's an amazing opportunity. If the team there feels that it's good enough to be the opening film, then I'm going with them, because then, they know what they know, and they're all experts and professionals. So I trust them implicitly. And yeah, so here it is, and I'm super, super excited, really nervous, because it's the FrightFest audience, and they're really dedicated audience goers for FrightFest, and they know their stuff, and there's going to be an expectation. Of course there is. I'm not naive enough to not think that. So yeah, all of those things do add to my nerves, but it's there's no turning back now. And yeah, no, it's great. It's really good. Oh yeah, I'm really excited.
So for people that haven't seen it yet, which is most people at this point, can you give us a little rundown of the story? And also, why was this the film that you wanted for your first feature, or why was this the film that became your first feature?
So in a nutshell, the sort of elevator pitch, I guess. So the story is about a woman who, in her past, in her childhood, suffered a tragedy, a trauma, which has basically affected her throughout her life, up until we see her on screen. The darkness prevailed over her. She found solace in her poetry, her drawings, her taxidermy. But there's always been a longing, a searching for love and belonging, I guess. And she's been on a quest to find the perfect family. I suppose it's just not in the way that, not in the conventional sense that you or I would go on a quest for love or the personal family, but it's horror. So, hey, it's much more than that, but that's kind of the basic outline of the story. There's other themes that we touch on, we deal with. There's love, there's betrayal, there's grief, there's isolation, there's loneliness, there's fantasy, there is imagination, and I think it's peppered with a bit of black comedy as well. So hopefully with that and the horror element, because there are a good few horror elements within the story, it will tick all the boxes for the audience.
And how did this end up becoming your first feature? What was it that drew you to this particular story?
Well, originally it was a short film called Sybil, and which we actually premiered at FrightFest a good few years ago. And that the story of the short film was brought to us by Tracey Sheals, whose original concept this was for the character of Sybil. And we made it into a short film, and it was great. We did it in 2.5 days. It was, micro budget, as these things always are, especially with shorts. And I always felt that there was more to the character, there was more to the story than what you could ever possibly portray in 15 minutes, a 7-page script or whatever. So we worked on it for a number of years, on and off, meeting up, talking about it, ideas, throwing them around. And then it kind of got shelved because other projects came in, and you've got to go where those are. The money was never there. But it was always something in the back of my mind. I always felt that it was something that would be made. I just didn't know when. And amazingly, the stars were aligned when a producer friend literally out of the blue emailed me and said that they were doing a female slate of films, all by female directors and producers, and they were looking for a genre script. And I said, well, I had a few up my sleeve, but it was so straight away, Sybil came into my head, and I thought, well, this could be interesting. The script wasn't finished, and Dominic, who's my partner, had written sort of 50-page script. It wasn't finished, but I thought, well, in for a penny, let's send it in and see what they say. And amazingly, they really liked it, and they said, okay, well, we need to develop this into at least 100 pages. So let's work on it together. So we worked on it with them, and sort of about 6 to 12 months later, it was greenlit, and we filmed it in Serbia, in Belgrade.
How did that location come about? Because that's quite a different vibe to what you expect the film is. So how did that come around?
And I never in a million years expected to be filming it in Serbia either. So it was really daunting, I can't lie. That's where the 6 films are going to be filmed, because it has a great tax credit and tax relief there. So I was literally being employed as a director, not as a producer or anything like that. So I was employed by that company and went over there, and I can't lie, I was pretty nervous because I'd never been there before, and I'd only seen photos that I Googled, and the architecture wasn't necessarily very British, and the whole place didn't have a great press, and I didn't know anyone from Serbia. But when I got over there, I was really, really pleasantly surprised, and the people were amazing, and super friendly. And surrounding me was that sort of brutalist architecture, especially in Belgrade, but there were other areas which were really beautiful and medieval as well. And so I spent a couple of weeks scouting locations, and I didn't get anything first time, but I eventually found all the locations with the team that I was looking for and I thought could work. And we had an amazing art department and production designer, and they really sort of created that world of Broken Bird, and it exceeded all my expectations. So I was really, really lucky.
Yeah, no, fantastic. It looks gorgeous as well. Like, it's a very, as you say, it's that gothic kind of tone, and having a kind of distinctive visual style as a director, I guess, is a certain pressure, or something that you want to be able to convey that this is my film, this is the style that I wanted to tell it in. Did you have that kind of distinct vision when you were working on the script or working with the script, or is that something that kind of grew as you collaborated and saw the locations?
I created a lookbook and a mood board, which I showed to all the HODs within the company and discussed, because don't forget, they're Serbian and I'm English, and I had to be really clear about what my vision was. And also, some of them hadn't even been to England before, so it was important for me to really convey that to them and to have that clarity. So amazingly, they are a very creative, talented team, and they got it. They got the story, and they saw what my vision was, the images that I'd put on the mood board and the lookbook, and then they just basically enhanced everything. We talked and we discussed a lot, and we all went obviously on the final tech recce with the scouting and stuff. They would then give their vision for what they thought, and again, it was elevated from what I had imagined, because I've only ever worked with tiny micro budgets, And you kind of just film what you can where you can. But this went up a different level. So each time I went to the new location, before, obviously I'd been to the locations because I'd chosen them, but before the day of filming, so we'd have like a 5-day or 6-day week, and on the Sunday was my sort of prep day and day off. But I would invariably go to the location just to see the production team, the carpenters and the creatives in the art department working furiously to get the set ready for the next day. And it always, I remember once, well, more than once, just turning up and just crying because I just couldn't believe how perfect the sets were, and the mood of it and the tone of it, which was, it's exactly what I wanted. It's what I envisaged. So I was really, really, I had a great DOP as well, Igor Matovich, who was fantastic. And he understood the story, understood the character, because let's face it, it's unusual. but they all seem to really gravitate towards it for whatever reason. And they, we just sort of, we ran with it and explored and created. It was a great collaboration.
Having worked extensively as an actor as well, did that kind of change your position in how you directed, or change your experience having, that knowledge of being on and off camera as well? Did that change how you approached directing other actors?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm probably a director's actor, although I love all the other technical aspects of filmmaking and directing. But I think I understand character, I understand story, and I like to challenge and I like to be challenged. And if, I work very closely with Rebecca, for example, who was obviously the lead, and, we spent a long time discussing the character and the journey and the arc and, all those things, and which was fabulous for me because that's what I do as well. So it didn't feel daunting in any way, which I can imagine it would do for some directors who haven't really worked with actors before. I suppose I've got that knowledge and experience, which is great. I don't necessarily have all the other aspects. I'm still learning and I'm still growing, but I think that for this particular piece, because it's very character-led, it was very useful.
And can we talk a little bit about the casting then? You've got a fantastic cast, as you just said. Rebecca Calder is amazing in the lead, slightly terrifying and creepy, but also with that very, like you said, kind of quirky comedy edge as well. So it's quite a layered character. How did her performance kind of change the character for you? Were there any differences? Was it exactly as you imagined on page, or how did the kind of casting inform the final product a little?
I met Rebecca for the first time via Zoom. I saw her tape and it was fantastic. I've said it before that she did a Geordie accent, and I had never envisaged it or imagined it to be from the northeast. But for some reason that just really worked, and I loved it because I hadn't had anyone do that. And there is something so warm and likable and friendly with the northeast accent, and which was great because some of the things that she does are so monstrous and despicable. So it was a really great contrast for me. Aside from that, she's a very enigmatic character and a person as well. So that really was brought to the role. And, she is a really warm, lovely, fun person to be around. So she had all these elements, but there was also, she wasn't afraid to go that bit deeper, to the darker corners of who Sybil was. And I suppose if she hadn't committed to that, then the performance wouldn't be what it is. If there was an element of fear of that, or doubt or embarrassment even, because she does some pretty crazy things, she just committed 100%. And And I think that's and also based it very much in reality, in her reality. There's a reason for everything that she did. It wasn't just because she was a psychopath or a sociopath or whatever, a murderer. It was all based in truth, and it came from somewhere. So I think that's what really works for the character.
Is this the kind of story that you're drawn to in general? Like, are you a hardcore horror fan? Are you a moderate horror fan? Are you drawn to gothic kind of dark comedy stories, or what's your preference in filmmaking and film watching?
I will watch pretty much anything. If someone gives me a choice, for example, of an evening and will say, "Oh, do you want to watch a horror or do you want to watch a comedy?" I will probably go for the horror. But that's not to say that I don't like comedy and drama and all of those kind of things. But I do have a tendency for the darker side of things, but I also like to find the light, if that makes sense, because I think there is comedy and tragedy, and I think it's great to sort of play and explore with them both. So I like dark fantasy, anything which is really story-led and character-led, and then you can build on that. I think as long as that's clear and that's where the audience can really go on that journey with that character, then, and we can hook them in, then I think that's what's exciting. That's what's storytelling for me. And to feel something, not just to go on the journey, but to really be emotional about it as well. I think it's always going to be slightly on the darker side, but yeah, I'll watch anything, and I'll explore anything. I feel that I'm sort of still a novice. I've only done one feature film. I've done a couple of shorts, and I've co-produced and co-written stuff, but in the sense of being a director, I've done very little, and I really have enjoyed the process of directing, and everything I've done so far has been slightly different and interesting and exciting. And I suppose we can just keep learning and growing, can't we?
Yeah,
always novice.
absolutely. And I'm glad to hear you had a positive experience, and that it has hopefully meant that you want to go on and do more things, which is fantastic. Yeah. Was there a moment that either growing up or as an adult where you fell in love with the idea of creating films, or even the concept of films? Was there a film or a person or an event that kind of led you to this realization, this is what you want to do?
Well, it's really interesting because I didn't, when I was younger and growing up, I loved all the sort of the classics, because that's what we didn't have phones and YouTube and all these different platforms. So it was normally a staple diet of the same films every Christmas, for example, the Laurel and Hardys, and then the Wizard of Oz's, and the Gone with the Winds. And so those were my kind of sort of movies that I was growing up on. And they're great stories, and they're really good storytelling, and you kind of learn so much from that. But I always wanted to be in the film industry. I always was drawn to stories and my imagination and all of that. But when I was growing up, I didn't know how to get into the film industry unless you were an actor. It wasn't a thing for women, or that I knew of, to be a director or writer or anything. I mean, of course there were there, but they were few and far between. And so for me, the only way I could get in my head was to be an actor, and that was a great experience as well. But the opportunity wasn't there. Or maybe it was, I just didn't know about it. But so I suppose, yeah, I think it's always been there. I've always wanted to do it, and subconsciously maybe I did want to be directing films, but I just didn't think that was ever going to be an opportunity for me. So it's been a long time coming, but it's been worth the wait, I suppose, because I've had a lot of experience in other areas of the industry. So strings to my bow and all of that. But film-wise, there's been many films that I've loved, and I name Gone with the Wind, I know Wizard of Oz, that they're classics. Then there's a sort of more horror stuff, which was things like, I don't know, The Exorcist, which I actually didn't sleep for about 3 or 4 years after I watched that, because I was like 12 or something. And that really embedded itself into my psyche. And then all the Omens and the Damians and all of that. And then there's also, the Tales of the Unexpected thing. I mean, they're dated now, but it's still great storytelling at the time. It really fed my imagination. And as I said, I'll watch anything, and I love British and European film as well. So anything with story and anything with character, yeah. But don't ask me what my favorite film is. I can tell you what's the most influential film that I think has always stayed with me, but that's an impossible question.
It is. I agree. Too much good stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Joanne. Pleasure to meet you, and a pleasure to watch your film, Broken Bird. Congratulations on the premiere. Congratulations on the debut feature. And just before you go, is there anything that you would like people to take away from the film, or anything you hope people feel when they're watching the film?
Yeah, I think for me it's about I want the audience to be drawn into the film, into the story, to be taken on that journey, to be immersed within the character, to find themselves liking the character but not understanding why, because really they shouldn't. But to question, why they're feeling certain feelings, and for it to be an experience, and not just an emotional experience, but an entertaining experience.
Well, it's certainly all of those things, and I'm sure people will love it. And I hope you can, enjoy the moments you see when you're peeking through the crack at the back of the theatre, and enjoying the bar as well. So congratulations. Look forward to meeting you in person at the festival, and all the best of luck with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.